I want to quickly share with you some timelines that are so skillful. They provide helpful models for the timeline component in your final project. And you're looking at Yutongs, and you can see right away that it's extraordinarily beautiful, right, with this layout that's exemplary, and along with just appreciating its visual beauty. I want you to understand that every element of your work, every element of the timeline needs to work with every other element to create a whole. And that's why I'm showing you Yutongs, where she's thoughtfully chosen to use ink painting calligraphy to set a whole point of view, to establish a theme. And so the most important thing to think about if you really want to be getting an A is being purposeful in all of your choices. And so when you are building ideas and writing a text in art history, you are working with images, and you want to be thoughtful, purposeful about what you select, the images that you present in terms of what they allow you to discuss, to demonstrate, right? So Gulnaz has chosen this marvelous elephant-shaped ewer from the Shang dynasty as an example of the vessels, their splendor, as well as their purpose. And then she's set it up as a comparison to this other vessel. She has, from the Han dynasty, this marvelous tomb painting of figures actually performing the ancestral feasts at the tomb. So you should always be thinking, what images can I bring in that allow me to point out something significant? That means being purposeful about linking your text to the art and linking the art to the history in your text. So Connor has this masterful timeline that begins with an oracle bone, tortoise plastron, from the Shang dynasty. And right away as a reader, you are intrigued to know, why am I looking at a tortoise plastron? And Connor explains that very clearly with really crisp, skillful writing. The Shang dynasty saw the beginning of the Bronze Age. Bronze was used in weaponry and technology. However, the most notable use discussed was the use of bronze as ritual objects. They were buried in the tombs of those in power to connect them to their ancestors. Another common practice to communicate with the spiritual world in this time was the use of oracle bones. Why is this great writing? Because it's very clear, direct, precise. Notice how in 4 sentences, he tells us about the Bronze Age, about the relationship of the bronze to practical uses in weaponry and technology, but then also to rituals, ancestors, and how the oracle bones are used. So none of it is fluff. None of it is thin. It's very richly detailed. And part of that is being purposeful about how you use source information. So the reason I just kept harping on engaging with a quote is to coax you to become more purposeful about how you choose and use a quote. You don't want to be just plopping quotes in and letting them sit there in some lazy fashion like a squatter in your text. And so Joseph really shows you how to do that well. So Joseph is an excellent writer, and so I'm picking on him because he's done this beautiful job. And he starts out by explaining what is shown in the image. Patterned with worn buildings of ancient fired bricks, we learn that the remains of the Indus River Valley civilization in Mohenjo-Daro are indicative of the first sophisticated and large-scale societies in India. He explicitly links what you are seeing to what he is defining for you, the Indus River Valley civilization. And he goes on to say, however, describing the limited information on the Indus River Valley civilization's cultural and religious practices, Stockshead and Cawthron disclose, although our knowledge of the Indus civilization is limited by the fact that we cannot read its writing, Motifs on seals, as well as the few discovered artworks, strongly suggest continuities with later South Asian cultures. Look what he does with the quote now. In essence, he's saying, in essence, what they're saying here is that although brimming with particular infrastructure, carved steels, and torso sculptures of important individuals, an array of information about the cultural and religious purpose of the artworks and architecture of the Indus River Valley remains obscure to this day. He gives us a broader perspective on the words he has chosen to insert. And I want you all to do that. We've been practicing this over and over, because when you reach the level of being able to actually use a quote, talk about it, engage with it, build on it, have it take you somewhere else, that is when you start to be able to have a sophisticated argument that develops in complexity. So one last example of masterful work. Jacqueline's here does that kind of building and linking, which is what I'm trying to help you get stronger doing. Building on ideas and linking one thing to the next. So she gives us the T-shaped silk banner, and she explains what it depicts. And then she talks about the use of silk here is significant because the Han Dynasty is responsible for opening safe access to the Silk Road. Wasn't that very artful? How she moved from the actual object made out of silk to what it means that silk was being produced and traded in a new way. So that allows her to tell us about the historical period, to use the silk banner as a window onto the world of the Han Dynasty with its peace, prosperity, and stability. She's also very purposeful about transitions. In fact, one very sophisticated move she makes is here in the Tang Dynasty, she looks back. We've gone from the first known Buddhist representation in China in the 6th Dynasty's period to the previous altar during the Sui Dynasty, and now we arrive at the Tang Dynasty. This kind of purposeful awareness of how the text, the timeline has begun, how it has built, what it has introduced, what it has explored, going back to it. This is, again, a really critical skill, which makes for an analysis that's not just one thing after another, but actually feels as if it has purposeful direction. So that's what I want you to be really thinking about when you are working on your final projects. And these timelines do not exist only to be timelines, but to get you thinking about historical context and also to think about the structure of the structure or development of an argument, because they're a kind of outline. They're a kind of outline of a story of change. And so when you are writing your pieces about the historical context, you want to be drawing on your own timeline, and you want to use your timeline to help you get clearer and deeper about the story of artistic change and what's happening in the lived experience of people in different historical periods that's driving that change.